Playing high notes on the clarinet is easy once you know how to do it. I'm really excited because this is a very special video that was requested by a member of the official Quick Start Clarinet community. Remember, if you haven't joined the official Quick Start Clarinet community, you can go down in the description and there's a link to do that. And I have a little bit of free training and free downloads there if you do it right now. It depends when you're watching this. If it's years in the future, my stuff might be different, but there will always be something free and something really valuable for you to get out of signing up for the official community. So go click on that in the description. Even right now, you could go down there and press Control click if you're on a PC or Command click if you're on a Mac and open that up in a new tab. So after this video is over, you don't forget to go over to do that. I know for me personally, there's a few things that I've been interested in from people that I listen to, and every time they mention it, I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that. I want to do that. And I'm actually grateful every time they do it because it reminds me to do it because I always forget. So I'm going to be a little bit more persistent about reminding you to join the official community because I think it's really valuable and will be really beneficial for your clarinet playing. And that's what my goal is. So go open that link in a new tab. So after this video is over, you don't forget to check that out and join the official community. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which is about improving your high notes. The high notes of the clarinet, both in the clarion register and the altissimo register. So if you don't know those terms, the clarion register is B natural in the middle of the staff, all the way up to C above the staff, and then the altissimo is anything higher than that. Those registers are always a little bit intimidating for beginning players especially, but even more advanced players can tend to struggle to get a really great sound up there in those higher notes. So I'm really excited to be making this video, and I hope that it helps you to get those notes to come out clearly and beautifully. So the first step to having really great high notes is actually having really great low notes. If your shallow register, which is the B flat in the middle of the staff and anything lower than that, if those notes don't always sound great or come out really clearly and easily, then you're going to struggle even more on the higher notes and the higher registers. You see, the low notes are pretty forgiving. You can get away with not a great embouchure and not a great airstream, and they'll still come out. They won't always sound the best or be the most in tune, but at least you'll get a sound. But if you take that same poor embouchure or poor air support and try to bring it up to the higher notes, then they'll either squeak, won't even come out, or will just sound really, really bad. So the first step is making sure that you have all those fundamentals really solid down on the low notes so that when you go up to the high notes, it's easier. I just want to do a quick demonstration of a couple of the different things that might be going wrong on your low notes that you don't realize that will be detrimental on the high notes. So the first thing is just generally weak air. The low notes, especially like the left hand low notes, we can get out with really, really little air, but if we keep that airstream, then it'll die out really fast. So what I'm gonna do is play one of those lower notes and then just press the register key without changing anything about how I'm playing, and you'll hear what happens. So I'm gonna start with a really weak airstream. So the high note like kind of comes out, but there's that big undertone. And the undertone, is, or a grunt is what some people call it, is where you get that like... There's sort of like the two tones happening in the higher note. And it often happens just because there's not enough focus and enough energy in the airstream. It could also be caused by some embouchure stuff, so I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to try to be better with my airstream, but just be really, really squishy with my embouchure and do the same exercise. So you can hear how I might have some of these fundamental mistakes that don't affect the low notes so bad that it's still not a great sound on the low notes, but it comes out at least. But the high note doesn't come out with those same things. So that's what I mean when I say the low notes are a little more forgiving and you can get them to work without everything being spot on. But as you get to the higher notes, they're a little bit more finicky and the margin of error becomes smaller. So you have to be really dead on and precise with all of those those variables to make sure that the fundamentals are spot on. Now the next step, assuming that you have great fundamentals and your low notes are going really well now, is to just stay steady as you go into the higher registers. A lot of people, especially when they're going over the break, and watch my over the break video to see all of my gripes about that phrase. But a lot of people, especially going over the break, tend to panic a lot. They're told that there's a break there and that you have to do something crazy. So you'll get weird things happening like, and it's frustrating because it's like, why isn't that note coming out? The A is fine, but there's so much changing. My embouchure was tensing up, my body was tensing up, the airflow wasn't continuing, my fingers were really tense, so I maybe wasn't covering all the holes really properly. And that happens to so many people as they go over the break, and also as they go into the higher registers, as they're playing higher notes, you might get something like this. And it's like, why do those high notes sound so bad and don't come out? And it's because you're freaking out about the high notes and tensing everything up. A lot of times this happens because people are trying to do something special to make the high notes come out and sound good. But the trick is, the pro tip here is, don't change anything and they'll come out better. A great exercise to practice staying steady going into the next register is actually what I did when I was talking about getting the low notes good, is a simple 12ths exercise where you slur up a 12th. So you can finger any shallow note, F or lower, and just press the register key to get to the higher note. So if I'm like fingering a low A and then I press the register key, it'll go up to an E. And that's a great way to practice getting like the low note to sound really good and really steady, and then just pressing the register key without changing anything else, and that should allow the upper note to come out really smoothly like this. And you can do it on a bunch of different notes. And literally nothing's changing. My air, my embouchure, my fingers, everything's staying perfectly steady. All I'm doing is just slightly moving my thumb onto the register key to get that slur up into the next register. One other quick thing that sort of goes along with being steady, especially going over the break, is the finger stuff. A lot of time people will tense up with their fingers, or they'll just miss in general. Going from A to B, the hardest thing about it isn't anything about a break or a change in the registers. The hardest thing is coordinating the fingers and getting them all to go down and really cover all of their holes. A lot of times people will be really tense and trying hard to get over that break again and doing extra stuff, and they won't remember to just keep their fingers relaxed and over the holes. It's actually interesting, if your finger's really tense and misses the hole, then it's gonna stay there because there's so much tension. Whereas if it's relaxed and misses the hole, it'll automatically sort of fall into the hole because it's relaxed and it's more pliable and flexible rather than being super tense. So that's another thing that sort of goes along with being steady and maintaining the quality from the low notes, is also the quality in your fingers covering. That's another reason why the 12ths are a great exercise, because sometimes beginners, especially if you're younger and your hands are smaller, playing down to these low notes in general can be a little tricky to get these bigger holes really covered with the good fleshy part of your finger. So if you can't play the low notes really good and clear with all the holes being covered, then you're not going to have a chance at playing the high notes. So that goes with being steady and being good at the low notes. So that's a good bonus about fingers there. And the final step for really improving your high notes is to just get comfortable with them. I think it's a great idea to do long tones up both in the upper clarion register and in the altissimo register if you're trying to get those notes to sound good. Because remember, long tones are a super simple exercise and sort of the most simple exercise because you're just holding notes for a long time and then moving to the next note well and holding it for a long time. And if you can't do the most simple exercise and feel really great and feel really comfortable about it, then whatever technical thing or whatever thing that you have to play up in those notes is not going to feel comfortable. If the simple stuff doesn't feel comfortable, anything even a little bit harder will feel less comfortable. So what I would recommend for this is you could even just play any scale and just hold each note really nice and long so you get used to feeling what it feels like and getting comfortable. And as you go up, try not to change anything. Just keep the air strong, keep the embouchure steady. If you have a great sound and great fundamentals on the lower stuff, then all you have to do is keep that steady as you go higher. So that might sound like this on the C major scale. So you just hold each note nice and long and comfortable and try to maintain the steadiness so that the sound stays great. If the sound gets worse as you go higher, make sure that you are staying steady and that you're not tightening up with your embouchure or backing off with your air. And then number two, make sure that your fundamentals are good so that your embouchure is reliable and strong and you have the right areas and your air is focused and strong. I'm not going to get in too much about what the fundamentals should be like because those are more across the whole instrument. I just want to focus on the high notes, but make sure that those things are steady and then the high notes will be no problem. The one final thing that I want to say about the high notes, especially the altissimo notes as you go even higher, is that part of being comfortable with it is just realizing that those are higher notes and they're gonna sound a little bit brighter and a little bit more shrill just because of the nature of the pitch getting up that high. So being comfortable with it and doing the long tones on there is in part to hear it and get used to what it sounds like. Of course, we want to get it to sound as best as possible, but those high notes just inherently, because they're high notes, are going to be a little brighter and a little bit more shrill, and that's okay. We want to make it as even as possible, but we need to get used to that, and you're never going to have like a high altissimo F sounding as smooth and buttery and rich and warm as a low shallow F, and that's just because of the physics of the note and the way that the frequencies work. You want to try to get it as close as you can, of course, but realize that it's never going to be exactly the same, and we just want to get it as even as possible. I find that a lot of people, in an effort to get the high notes to not be so projecting, they'll try to really like back off with the air and play those notes really soft and tenderly, which is a good thing to be able to do. But if you're not comfortable playing them at a normal dynamic and just really keeping the air support going through them, then if you're thinking about backing off and doing anything special to get those notes to be more mild, then you're not going to be able to get them out reliably and comfortably. So the first step is to just keep the air support going and keep everything steady, even if it is a little bit extra loud and maybe a tiny bit extra bright. And then from there, the next step is to work on tempering that after you're really comfortable with how it feels to get those notes out nice and reliably up there. So that's it for getting comfortable with the high notes. The first step is to make sure that your low notes have the fundamentals going really well on them. The second step is to just make everything steady as you move up into the higher notes so that you're not changing any of those great fundamentals you established on the low notes. And then the last step is to just spend a lot of time playing up there so you get comfortable both with how it feels and how it sounds. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope this gives you some thoughts on things to practice to improve your high notes. And if you think this would be helpful for anybody else that you know that struggles with high notes, which you probably know a few people because high notes are one of the biggest complaints and biggest struggles on the clarinet. And I hope that this video makes it easy for you and easier for anybody that you share it with. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in another video.